Hello, my name is Callie Rupp, and I am a graduate student at Morningside College, and I currently teach at Caixin School in Taipei, Taiwan. This is a presentation of a study of the effects of peer-led small groups on reading achievement in a Taiwanese kindergarten. Problem statement. Students need an effective way to build a strong foundation of reading skills in order for them to become good readers. It is very important for students to build this strong foundation because reading is a skill that they will use for the rest of their lives. I chose this topic to research because peer-led small groups are a tool that are already utilized at my school, and I wanted to see if there was a real benefit to them. Literature review. Foundational reading skills. Foundational reading skills start being taught in kindergarten. Students need the following to build a strong reading foundation. They need to understand basic alphabet knowledge. This includes letter-sound relationships. For example, students need to know that the letter A says ah. This will help them when they start to blend letter sounds to form words. Students also need to be able to read sight words or high-frequency words, as well as identify vocabulary with the use of pictures. Differentiation. Classrooms of today show students come to school with varying backgrounds and needs. Teachers need to teach to all the needs of each student, and using differentiation can help teachers to do this effectively. Differentiation can take all of the differences that students have in their learning needs, learning styles, and preferences, and allow teachers to provide more pertinent instruction for their students. Differentiation is a more student-centered approach to learning and really takes the needs of each student into account. Limitations to whole group instruction. While there are obvious benefits to whole group instruction, students might never feel comfortable asking for help in a whole group setting. It can also be more difficult for the teacher to differentiate instruction during the whole group time. It is also harder for the teacher to check for understanding effectively when teaching to the whole group. One-on-one instruction. Obviously, this has benefits for children, but is not realistic in today's classroom. One-on-one instruction is very time-consuming and is hard to do with classes of 20 or more students. Teacher-led small groups. There has been a lot of research on small groups that are led by a teacher. These groups can be beneficial to students because students can be grouped according to their ability level. These students might all be reading at the same level and therefore can read the same book together. This can really help hone in on specific skills that students are struggling with. There are many benefits of working in small groups. Small group interventions have been shown to boost reading ability because they can help pinpoint areas that students need help in. Differentiation is also easier to achieve when students are in small groups. One group might be working on their writing skills, while another might be working on reading skills, and teachers can target this instruction so that it really meets the needs of those specific students. Working in small groups also helps students to build skills that they will use for life, such as collaborative skills, reasoning skills, social skills, and problem-solving skills. It is important for students to learn these skills from a young age so that they can continue to use them effectively throughout their lives. Implementing small groups effectively is extremely important for the small groups to run well. This includes the students that are in each group and the activities that are being done. They should all be very well planned. Procedures need to be clearly modeled and understood by students prior to the start of small groups. Using small groups for reading skills. Small groups can focus on a lot of different things when it comes to reading skills, and this can effectively help teachers to differentiate instruction for reading. Some groups could focus on spelling, writing, sentence building, phonics, sight word reading, vocabulary, among many other things. The use of small groups for reading skills allows students to practice a variety of reading skills. Small groups and the theory of multiple intelligences. When teachers construct their lessons around different styles of intelligence, they are more likely to meet the different learning needs of each student. One group might be using speaking skills, while another group might be using writing skills. This would work towards different intelligences that students come to school with. Goals and objectives. The purpose of this study was to see if the use of peer-led small groups improved the reading ability of students in a kindergarten classroom in Taiwan. Students began this study by taking a pretest and ended it by taking a post-test that was the same as the pretest. The measure that was used for this study were assessments from readingaz.com. These assessments were chosen because they are aligned with Common Core state standards, and it is a website that students are already familiar with. For vocabulary identification and beginning sounds, students were shown 10 pictures. First, they were asked to identify one picture. After identifying the word, they were then prompted to say the beginning sound of the word. Students were asked to read a list of 10 nonsense consonant, vowel, consonant, or CVC words. These words really help the teacher to know if the student is properly developing good sounding out skills. Students were prompted to read a list of 20 sight words or high frequency words. These words are not easy for students to sound out and are words that students need to recognize by sight. The hypothesis of this study was that the use of peer-led small groups would improve reading ability. The independent variable of this study was the use of peer-led small groups, while the dependent variable was reading skills. This was a quasi-experimental study. The possible impact of this study could help teachers make informed decisions on the use of peer-led small groups to help boost students' reading ability. My work as a practitioner will be impacted on whether or not I continue to use peer-led small groups in my classroom. Methodology. The participants in this study were 24 Taiwanese kindergarten students ages 5 and 6. All students were in their third year of kindergarten at a private school in Taipei, Taiwan. They are also in their third year of learning basic English. All students were Taiwanese and speak Chinese as their first language. Permission was received from the school to perform this study. The materials that were used in this study were that students participated in peer-led small groups twice a week for 6 weeks. The control group participated in small groups that were not related to reading, while the experimental group participated in 6 different small groups, as shown on the following slides. In one of the groups, students played a game called Zap, where they practiced reading sight words. Students also played a CVC or consonant-vowel-consonant board game, where they were able to practice reading their CVC words in a fun board game format. Students used iPads to practice their vocabulary skills. They practiced writing and drawing pictures of different vocabulary words. Students played a CVC memory game where they practiced reading and matching CVC words. In the Roll, Read, and Write group, students practiced reading and writing different sight words. And in the Silly Sight Word Sentences group, students created silly sentences using different sight words and consonant-vowel-consonant words. Peer-led small group procedures. Students participated in peer-led small groups twice a week for 30-minute periods for 6 weeks. Students spent 8 minutes participating in a small group with 2 minutes in between for cleanup and switching of materials. Students participated in 3 different centers each time they did small groups, so that they were able to do each center once per week. Data analysis. Progress was monitored using data from a pre-test and a post-test. Data was analyzed at the end of 6 weeks of small groups, and data was analyzed using an independent sample t-test. Results. There was an increase in student reading comprehension scores as a result of using peer-led small groups. Given the t-scores on this page, the null hypothesis can be rejected and these scores can be seen as significant. Even though the gains were not huge for the experimental group, there were still some reading achievement gains made. All students showed growth during the post-test. The post-test mean score for the control group was 35.5 out of 50, while for the experimental group it was 37.62. Implications, limitations, and recommendations. This study showed effectiveness of using peer-led small groups. The hypothesis was proven to be true. It showed peer-led small groups in a positive light and can hopefully motivate more teachers to try the use of peer-led small groups in their classrooms in the future. Parents can feel confident in what and how their children are learning if they are participating in peer-led small groups at school. Students can benefit from working in a small group with their peers without direct teacher involvement. Limitations. There are limitations to this study. Since students are all English language learners, this study might not be conducive to non-English language learner students. Centers and procedures for running small groups were already well known to students prior to them participating in the small groups. The results of this study might be different if the centers and procedures were brand new to students at the beginning of the study. Instructions for the centers and procedures for how to run them were given in English first and were then translated in Chinese for students to truly understand. The results of this study might be different if students were not given the instructions in Chinese and were only given them in English. This might have decreased their level of understanding and not made the small groups run as effectively. Teachers tried to keep students from speaking Chinese during small groups, but as they are only 5 and 6 years old, this was nearly close to impossible. The results of this study might be different in students who don't speak Chinese and who do speak English as a first language. Recommendations. There has not been many studies done on the use of peer-led small groups. There should be a study done with students who speak English as their first language to see if peer-led small groups have the same effect regardless of English speaking level. There have been no studies, or few to none, on peer-led small groups where the teacher does not have an active role. Have other teachers used these in their classrooms, and have they worked for other teachers? There is a call for more research to be done on the use of peer-led small groups in order to see if they really effectively play a role in boosting student reading skills. References. Thank you for listening to my presentation.